Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I am going to talk about the books that I read in January 2025. Now, I have not managed to get many videos out there this month. I began recording a vlog in the first week of the year, and so there are going to be moments throughout this video where I might intersperse my original thoughts on these books there. But I believe I only made it to the Wednesday of the first week. The books that I read in January are 84 Charing Crossroad by Helen Hanff. This was a reread and is something that I do annually based on a read-along that Sarah of Hardcover Hearts hosts. Then we have Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. This was another reread for me and was a re-listen, actually. I listened to the audiobook of this one and carried it over from 2024. Then we have The Eight Doctors by Terrance Dicks. The Party by Tessa Hadley. Vampire Science, whose authors I can't remember. I'm wondering whether this was a Jonathan Blum and Kate Orman book, but the correct authors will be listed in the description. Then we have Gliff by Ali Smith, The Night Alphabet by Joelle Taylor, Death at the Sign of the Rook by Kate Atkinson, Redhead by the Side of the Road by Anne Tyler, Victory City by Salman Rushdie, and Emotionally Weird by Kate Atkinson. So I both started and ended the month with rereads, and this was because I had made it a goal this year that I was going to reread more books. One of the reasons that I wanted to finish a lot more of the books from my shelves last year is because when I was younger I always liked to reread, and so I feel like if I had fewer books left unread on my shelves, then I would feel less guilty about going back to a favourite and rereading it. Whenever I read Emotionally Weird, I feel like I haven't read the book before. Like I am remembering a completely different novel. And one of the aspects that I like about this book is that Kate Atkinson is so playful in the writing of it. There are instances throughout the book when Effie, the protagonist, is telling her tale to her mother, that her mother will interject to her and say, "You have too many characters here. No, I don't want that character to die." And Effie will change the story according to her mother's needs. I was listening to an interview that Kate Atkinson gave when she was discussing A God in Ruins, and in that, she talked about how she likes in fiction to emphasise that the book is fiction. And that kind of brought me around to a different way of thinking about A God in Ruins, because I did not like the final conceit of that novel. But that was something that I recognised more with this book, is the way that although it's fiction and we're often told as writers in our fiction that we have to make it believable, Kate Atkinson is skewing that, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants the reader to be very aware that this is fiction and she's having fun with it. And so on this reread, that's something that I was looking at more, and I was thinking more about the fact that there are a ton of characters in here and you don't necessarily remember them, and you can almost agree with the mother character who is saying to her, "No, we don't need to know the name of this character. We don't get anything about this character. They're merely just here to serve one function, and then you move on past them. We don't know anything about them, so their names are meaningless." And I really appreciate that with this book this time around. And I think what I'm gaining from my regular rereads of Emotionally Weird recently, because it's become a book that I take into the bath, so I just open it at any page and just read for a bit. Better idea of rereading as a way to actually gaining more from reading a book. And so, yeah, I understand why this book is a lot of people's least favourite Kate Atkinson's, but I am enjoying it. I was speaking to my friend Charlie of Charlie Book Reads and talking about how when I was younger, every weekend I would reread The Bed and Breakfast Star. I didn't own a lot of books, so I just had to reread the ones from my shelves. And that was the one I picked up every either Friday night into Saturday morning or Saturday night into Sunday morning. And I just read it from cover to cover. It's probably one of the reasons that I needed glasses when I was younger, because my brother wouldn't let me have the light on. So I had to have the landing light on and read by the light from there. But I want another book like that. I want another book where I don't care whether a week has passed, a month has passed. I just want to spend time with the characters. And I don't know why that book's been Emotionally Weird for me. I do probably think there should be another Kate Atkinson, but I just go to this one because it's such a battered up copy already that I don't feel bad about throwing it around in my bag and just bringing it along with me and reading it. And I didn't mean to go on so much about Emotionally Weird. I mean, again, I only read all of Kate Atkinson's novels in 2023, and I hadn't planned on getting Death at the Sign of the Rook by her in hardcover, but it was in a sale, and I really wanted to read more Kate Atkinson. And it was this book that sent me off reading Emotionally Weird, because once I'd finished it, I did not want to leave this author's side yet. And so Death at the Sign of the Rook is the latest Jackson Brodie novel, but it did that thing that I've always liked. Well, it did that thing that I've not necessarily cared for in Agatha Christie novels before, when all of these other characters are interacting with each other and the detective whose series it is doesn't show up until very late in the book. Jackson is present in this book, but I'd say that he's probably just a character where things are happening and he just happens to be there. I feel like he's grown a lot less serious since that first book, and I think, again, that this is something the author has talked about, is the way that the character has changed since the first book, Case Histories, over 20 years ago. And in this one, it definitely felt more comedic than I'd say the other Jackson Brodie books have. What I liked about this was that we just went into the lives of all these people, and then there was a bit of a mystery, and the mystery, did it get resolved in the end? I don't know. There was a lot in the end of this book to do with coincidence, and Charlie from a few years ago would have hated that. But I really liked it in this book, and I think it was because I think I'm gaining more of an idea as to who Kate Atkinson is as a writer outside of the fiction, and I'm beginning to appreciate that more. And so I was able to go into this book and read it and just really appreciate the way that she'd captured the characters. And yes, there were coincidences happening, but at the end of the day, it was just fun, and I like that. And also, I'm beginning to realise that my tastes have changed from what they were years ago, and nowadays I prefer well-captured stories. I like a strong voice, and speaking of a strong voice, I will talk about The Night Alphabet by Joelle Taylor. The writers group had cancelled one of its Thursdays because of the snow and ice that was on the ground. And so I had nothing better to do than to stay in the house all day and read this book. I started it and finished it on the same Thursday because in the beginning of this book, there was a really strong character voice from a Lancaster miner. And I thoroughly adored those first 100 pages. I thought the voice was strong and I wanted to see where the story was going to go. This is a book that has left me in a quandary, because I like the central idea of this book being that this person is covered in tattoos, and each tattoo represents a different life that she's led, that this character can fall forward into any form of character. Jones can be in a man's body, a woman's body, that sort of thing. And it talks a lot about the way that we do value and view women's bodies and women's lives. Not just in history, not just nowadays, but speculating about the future as well. And I think that my issue in reading it was because I'd really liked that strong Lancastrian voice at the beginning of this book. I thought it was captured incredibly well. I wanted more of that. I wanted more of those historical lives than the speculative lives. So it's not that the book did anything wrong. I really liked the writing. I liked the idea behind it. And I like the way that Joelle Taylor brought a sense of plot and this general thread through that I hadn't realised was there until we reached the end of the book. And all in all, it is a fantastic book. I can't deny that. And, you know, for me to have read this tome in a day and be utterly compelled to do so says something about the narrative and says something about the writing style and the stories that are being told. But there was just part of me that wanted more of those historical stories about normal people that I felt like I could sympathise with and empathise with than the speculative ones. So that's the only thing that detracted from the experience for me, because ultimately I think that this book says a lot and says it in an incredible fashion. I do think that I said something about Gliff in these vlog clips, so if I did, then I will include that here, even if I am in the hooded blanket on the day that I did that. I struggled with Companion Piece by Ali Smith and wondered whether I would read anything by the author again. But This came up in the Waterstone sale, and so I went and I watched a review from Ros of Skelly Dandling about the books and Eric Carl Anderson. And watching them talk about this, reading a few reviews, made me decide that I want to really give this my own opinion. And I have to say, in terms of Ellie Smith novels, I am 110 pages into this book, having only started it this morning. And I am enjoying what I'm reading. I think that the author still has this tendency to kind of bash you over the head with some of their beliefs, but this time around there's more of a narrative running through than I found that there was with Companion Piece. Ali Smith always puts in something about technology and the way that technology is almost combating humanity in a way. And there are some things, like Ross says in her review, how she was agreeing with the author, but there was just something there. I don't know whether the author needs to hit us over the head so completely with her opinions, but there were moments where I felt like the arguments against specific instances with technology and our relationship with technology, there were cases where I felt like it was done well. So I'm interested to see how that goes on. And obviously, as with all Ali Smith's books, I've read it rather quickly. I'm also enjoying reading about these two sisters and how they get on with each other. I'm wondering how it's going to relate to the other book called Gliff that the author has coming out this year. And it's one of those occasions where I've read an Ellie Smith and I wish that it was like when Sarah of Hardcover Hearts held the read-along of the seasonal quartet, because I would really enjoy being able to read this book alongside other people who are perhaps more knowledgeable than me, who can provide me with more insight. I think that this is a book that I wish to reread and see what I can garner from it as I become a more experienced reader and perhaps, hopefully, a more knowledgeable person in future.
A few moments later.
I did like Gliff. I do still feel like at times Ali Smith is trying a lot to be smart with the wordplay. And again, she's an author who bears rereading, and I probably will do that in future because the books are rather quick to get through. I feel like there's a lot of allegory going on within Ali Smith and a lot of references to other pieces of literature, and I wonder whether they're lost on me because I don't know what she's referencing. But I do like the wordplay and the discussions that she has within her books. It was a scary dystopic tale anyway that felt very close to home. Weirdly, we have Redhead by the Side of the Road by Anne Tyler. And I say weirdly because I had absolutely no intention of ever reading an Anne Tyler book again. So with Ali Smith, after reading Companion Piece, I was like, she's got fans, she doesn't need me. And I was the same with Anne Tyler. I went back and watched my review of A Spool of Blue Thread. And at the end of that video, I said, I would not mind if I never read Anne Tyler again. Then one of my volunteers came into the shop and she just read this. And she's been recommending Anne Tyler to me for years. And she said this wasn't her best work, but I was like, well, it's a really nice copy. And it was talking about how this is Micah Mortimer is a creature of habit. And I was like, well, I can be a creature of habit at times. I enjoy a routine occasionally, so I'll give it a read. And I did. And this became the book that I just read over one weekend. And it started this thing that I've enjoyed this last month of taking some time and no longer doing a Sudoku in bed or doom scrolling and just having a read. And I really enjoyed my time with this one. It's incredibly short. It's just a snapshot of this man's life. Somebody turns up at his door thinking that he could be his long lost son. You get to see a little bit of the way his family operates and why he might live how he lives. And you get to see the disruption to his life and the idea that he might begin to change. And then the book ends. I don't know, there was just something that felt kind of like perfect about that. I don't need to see what's going to happen after this point. I got the little tale of who he is, and I got to see the disruption, and then the book ended. And if I was still the reader that I was when I read A Spool of Blue Thread, then I would have hated this book. But I just found it endearing, and I've liked following the character of Micah. I liked reading about the way he dealt with things. I liked that he was a bit of an everyman, and I don't know, there's something I like about reading things about the more mundane, everyday aspects of life now. I get it with Elizabeth Strout, and I never thought I'd get it with Anne Tyler, but I got it with Anne Tyler this month, and it has made me want to go and read more works by this author, which is an incredible turnaround that I didn't think I would be saying, 9 years ago. But I also finally revisited an author who I've been talking about revisiting for ages, and that was Tessa Hadley with this novella called The Party. And this was a perfect little novella. I do believe I recorded something about this, so if I did, then I will include that here. I read The Party by Tessa Hadley yesterday, a brilliant novella about a sibling friendship. Two sisters go to the pub in the first chapter and really just get to play off the sibling dynamics and the post-war period and what life was like. It's very fast. It's a flash in the pan of a story, just seeing what's going on with these characters and how much a life can change over a very short period of time. And I particularly enjoyed it. Recommend it for winter reading, and I'm already considering reading it again. I wanted to get this book. I didn't know that it existed, but when I was doing my reflections last year and looking back on 2014 and my reading then, I saw that I'd read Married Loved, a short story collection by Tessa Hadley, and realised that I had actually planned on reading more by the author and hadn't done it yet. So when I saw this slim volume, I thought, let's read it and see whether it holds up. And I'm not putting Tessa Hadley down as one of the official writers that I want to read more from this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if I did. I found a book that I thought, oh yeah, I could reread this at one time. I really enjoyed seeing the siblings' relationships discussed in such a short fashion, and I thought that she captured the time and place very well. And again, similar to Anne Tyler, this has left me wanting to go and read more books by this author in future. And I don't want to leave it as long as I have done between reading the short story collection that I read, a decade ago, and this book. A book that slowed down my reading, and I still didn't really like too much, but I read it based on who the author was and wanting to explore this novel on a craft level, and so it's Victory City by Salman Rushdie. I read the first 8 pages and was really invested in the tale, but it soon fell into this fairy tale storytelling style that I didn't necessarily care for. But every time I put the book down and went and read something else, I'd come back to it. So this book took me 2 weeks to read, and is the story of this titular Victory City told as though the narrator is rewriting what the protagonist wrote in this epic poem, 1,000 years ago? And, well, maybe not 1,000, maybe 600, 700 years ago? A long time ago, anyway. I like this idea. It was something I've been debating about myself when I'm thinking about another novel further down the line, of the narrator doesn't have all of the facts correct, and so they're unreliable because they're retelling a story that they have been told. And I like that idea. Or they're only pulling out the favourite parts of the tale to make it more dramatic. I like the idea of that being a way to tell a story as well. And so I did like reading it for the storytelling aspect. I thought that it was great that Salman Rushdie had managed to keep that measured pace and tone throughout the book. However, it felt like reading a textbook. Not a textbook that was going to leave me with a headache, but a textbook nonetheless. I appreciated the reading of it to give me an idea of the way that stories can be crafted, and I appreciated finally having read a novel by Rushdie, and I might go and read other books by this author in future. I like the touches of magic throughout, and didn't really care about anything that happened within the book. I probably should have DNF'd it, but I'm also glad to have read it. And them's the books. If you would like to discuss any of the books that I have mentioned in this video, then please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.